Welcome to Tea and Total War, your game discussion podcast served with a cup of hot caffeine. Today's episode is How the Sausage is Made, an interview with Rich Aldridge, the director of DLC for the Total War Warhammer series. We originally meant to have webcam footage for you to view as well, but this happened.
In the background so I can make sure all my audio and stuff looks good.
How it managed to freeze on the most flattering moment possible is another question entirely, but at least you can still enjoy Rich's smiling face, and we still have his pleasant baritone voice to listen to. So kick back, relax, and enjoy this interesting deep dive into the world of game content creation while you work.
Hey man, pleasure, big fan of your work. You've been working on the DLC since Warhammer 1, is that right?
Yeah, from the very beginning.
What, 2015 you started all this?
Probably even a bit before that for me, but yeah, somewhat. I lose track of time, to be honest.
I bet. Is it like your specialty? Is that one of those things like you chose to work on Warhammer? Like, did you work on historicals before that?
Yeah. So my background at CA, I'll give you a little bit of that. I joined CA working as a level designer on a game called Viking Battle for Asgard. I don't know if you ever saw that one. So I made all the big battles there, the big city battles and all that kind of fun stuff. And then once that finished, ended up being asked to come across to Total War because I enjoyed strategy games at the time, albeit wasn't really a Total War player. Many other types of games in the RTS genre. So joined the team, started helping out with tutorialization. So you would have seen my first work on Empire, and then continued on with that on like Shogun 2, Rome 2. Yes, I made loads of those city maps, some of which were too big, but they were a lot of fun. So I've always liked level design and that kind of stuff. And then the natural transition was, once all of that had wrapped up, going to Warhammer, because I loved Warhammer as a kid, growing up playing with my mates, lots of Blood Bowl, 40k, bits of fantasy, everything in between, painting. Trying to get your miniature in the local games workshop in that cabinet, that was the real challenge. So yeah, when they said this game was coming up, it was like, oh my goodness, that's like perfect. So I've stuck with it ever since, and yeah, had a lot of fun with it.
I grew up really poor, and I always thought Warhammer was the coolest. We actually had a Warhammer store in my local mall, and I just couldn't afford anything. And when Total War started covering Warhammer, I was so excited because I could finally play it. Like I could get into the world, I could do the miniatures, and it was just the coolest thing in the world to me to finally be able to interact with something I always wanted to but couldn't afford. And I want to make sure to compliment you in particular, because I was always kind of like, I mean, Warhammer was fun, but then Ikit Claw came out, the DLC for Ikit Claw, and it was just so drastically different. Like I had never played a DLC that played so differently from a base game before. Ever since then, like the DLCs just kept getting better and better and better, and I've just been so impressed by your work. I mean, I can definitely tell it's a cumulative effort. You're always pushing it, always trying to experiment and do more interesting things. It's funny when they announced like, oh, yo, don't worry, Rich Aldridge is coming back for the DLC. The community was like, oh goodness.
Yeah, that was quite weird seeing. It's nice, don't get me wrong, and
intimidating.
The team love it. That people enjoy what we make. But yeah, you're right. Like Ikit Claw, like Prophet of Morlock, was definitely taking the gloves off. Be honest, like I've said in some other interviews, it's really been the fans, the community that have helped us do that. When I worked on one, I remember me and Ian and some of the other team, we were really unsure as to how much we changed things up from the Total War formula, because in theory we had some people coming in from the Warhammer scene, but we had a lot of players to look after from, Total War, and that game has always been built with symmetrical element to it. Everyone gets a bit of everything, and you sort of play it out. And, I'm so glad that we all agreed to pursue the idea of asymmetry and, add the big and the wonderful. But we were very shy and cautious in doing it. And yeah, it's only through the DLCs where you feel like you get the opportunity to experiment a little bit more and blow stuff up, that we are where we are today. So
yeah, those first ones are definitely much safer. Is there any one that if you could go back and try it again, you'd be like, yeah, I want another crack at that one?
Definitely, we're in the process of doing that, basically. So you go back to our very first one would have been Beastman, and we've already gone back and we've had a nice change of pace there, and done the old world update, and we're really pleased with that. But the one that came straight after that, Grim and the Grave, that is definitely the one where I think we'd all say as a group was like, yeah, that was basically trainer wheels on. Let's just see what floats, and it didn't. Right. Again, I've said before, maybe not my finest hour picking Helm and Gorst. At the time, GW, as they always do, they're brilliant. They send us all the materials, all the books, and we had the book Sigmar's Blood, and we're sort of looking through there, and you've got Manfred in there, and Volkmar, and various other people, and there's this character called Helm and Gorst, and we thought, well, we've already got Manfred in the game. He sounds kind of interesting. He's got his brothers and his pimped up corpse cart going around the world, and thought, yeah, that should be kind of interesting and fun and different. We haven't really got someone that fits that mould. I know we had Kemmler, but yeah, it felt different enough. And then, of course, everyone went, who the hell's this? Why have you not picked Conrad? Why have you not picked Isabella? Why have you not? And we're like, oh boy, yeah, sorry, whoopsie. So he's got a place, if albeit a meme going forward, but he's got a place, and we've actually done some work to him in Immortal Empires and to Volkmar. So Volkmar's got some interesting faction mechanic going in now, which is a spin on the kind of the Books of Nagash. So rather than obviously him trying to fill out his library, he's more going to be dousing the flame to them and torching them, as he doesn't want to see them in the world. And yeah, Gorst, we've been polishing up his corpse cart, moving him out to I think somewhere out towards Cathay, so he's got a new starting location to go and play around with, and he's got more buffs and upgrades around kind of necromancy. So sure, he's not going to be everybody's favourite, but he's got a place in the game now, and hopefully some people still enjoy him, and we'll make many other characters, but there'll be more fan favourites going forward.
So yeah, the general idea behind this is I want to know how the sausage is made. They say don't ever ask, but that's what I'm interested in. And you segued beautifully into a question I already had, which is how much control do you have as an individual over which character is being chosen next? And it sounds like you got to pick.
Yeah, that is one of the perks of the job, or the challenges of the job, shall we say, in having that responsibility. But it's one that I've definitely got my thoughts on. You've met Andy in the past, Andy Holwright. We get on like a house on fire, and I definitely use his knowledge and expertise in there and planning out bits and pieces with him and the rest of the team. So we're really looking for what makes an interesting thematic and sort of mechanical matchup. If you're looking at a Lord pack or campaign packs, sort of write themselves right. We've looked at 8th edition. We know what armies are out there that Games Workshop have created. So working our way through those. We might have some other things on the horizon in the future, but certainly at the moment our main focus, as we've always said, is the 8th edition. So yeah, we do get the opportunity, or I get the opportunity to sort of feedback to Games Workshop, particularly like when we made Norska. That was a really interesting conversation with them, because we wanted to make another kind of pack at the end of Warhammer 1, Warhammer 2, and we floated around with a few different ideas, and we settled on Norska. And then Games Workshop were really good at helping us, like looking at what characters it might be, what units we could be, to sort of flesh it out. So poster boy being Wolfric makes sense. He's from Norska, but who could the other character be? So again, sort of look through the army books, and as much as Throg isn't from Norska, he's kind of close enough extent. So he was a great choice, because then we've got kind of a duelist, we've got a big monster, we've got some different mechanics going on there, different things that they can offer, and then with the rosters as well. There was no army book there, so we knew we were going to take kind of the bread and butter marauders from the warriors. We knew we wanted the mammoth, right? We'd seen the Forge World model, and that's just amazing. but what else could we have? So yeah, essentially we'd go through the different books, different kind of supplements and feedback to Games Workshop, and that's why we ended up having the Familiars come in. They felt like a creature that might dwell in some of these parts of the world, even though it's maybe not their main homeland. They would give us that role of something tanky, something monstrous, fit in there, yeah. So it's a lot of fun. So we had that challenge now for 3. What comes next?
You bring up a really interesting point right there about how you're talking about selecting the various units, looking through the lore, things like that. So when you're looking for new characters and new units, is it a matter of like the rule of cool, what looks good on screen? Is it utilitarian? What draws your eye to certain choices?
It's a bit of all of that, really, right? We like to follow the suit of Games Workshop in that they made some, real strong themes around some of the characters. Take Skaven, for example. They're like ultra thematic. You've got kind of ninjas of the Far East. You've got crazy, mad scientists blowing stuff up. You've got people mixing potions and the like. And they've got some real strong vibes there. And me and the team have definitely embraced that going forward. So you've definitely seen that across in Warhammer too. Like Hunter and the Beast. The general concept there was right. Okay. We knew we wanted to do Empire again because they're one of the fan favourites. And I love Lizardmen, as I've always said. So like, what could we do there? And it kind of got us thinking like, well, what real world scenario might there be? What thing could we do? Oh, okay. You can have kind of the Spanish invading kind of, South America. That's a good way to move Marcus Wolfhart, even though he's in his massive, thick old furry bearskin coat. You might have a bit of a sweat on, but yeah, we thought that could be a good play on that. It gets you to enjoy a new part of the world, which is really important to us. And then that got us thinking, okay, well, who's he going to be against, and what's the makeup of the units? And we'd already done a lot of the Empire units, but one of the earliest memories I had of reading a White Dwarf was this battle report where there was the war wagon. So I went digging around for that, and I found it, and I thought actually that might make for quite an interesting little thing in the game. We haven't got it, a bit of nostalgia there. It's mobile, most importantly, and we wanted Marcus to feel mobile, with his kind of ability to shoot his arrows. And we introduced the archers, which weren't in the game, and then of course we had Nakai. So I guess like your question about what else would I like to go back and improve, Nakai is definitely one as well. So if it was Grim and the Grey from Warhammer 1, it's definitely Nakai from Warhammer 2. We wanted to try something new and different there. We wanted to try and see what it would feel like to have another crack at doing a Horde. And again, there's some nice bits around it, but there's some bits that just haven't kind of panned out the way that we'd hoped. And I think, how his AI faction gets attacked by others and drags you into wars, it didn't quite go to plan. But, it's something on our radar maybe for the future that we return to and we try and look to improve. So one of those things with DLC, we want to be creative, we want to be experimental, we want to push the boundaries, we want to see what works, I guess what doesn't, so that we do more of what does. So maybe that is Ikit with his nuclear weapons blowing stuff up, and probably less of the kind of the horde mechanics. As you then saw with like Vampire Coast, we totally changed how hordes worked.
I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of comments about Nakai over the years. That was the first Horde campaign I ever finished. I see you were trying something different right there, and I liked a lot of what was happening. So I never play Hordes, and I finished that campaign.
That's nice.
It sounds like, even with units, you seem to have a lot of choice about finding that one specific thing and digging in and really getting something that's awesome. Has there ever been something you've like dug in like really deep to find, and everyone was like, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. That's too weird.
Yeah, because obviously we can look at what might make sense to us, but we have our working relationship with Games Workshop, and it has to make sense to them as well. So sure, there's been a few things that we've maybe discussed with them, and they're not quite appropriate. They're not their core IP. You find that there's a lot of, for example, there's a lot of fan created content out there, right? There's a lot of kind of kit bash stuff. So it's very easy for people to assume that stuff is legit, and it's not necessarily. It's people's take on the Games Workshop IP, the Warhammer IP, and them having a bit of fun with it. But we have to stay, and we absolutely do stay true to the source material. So we've definitely noticed why people have said, "Oh, why is this not in the game, and why is that?" And it's simply because it's not canon, and we want to make sure that what we represent is. There's loads to do right, and as we touched on earlier, having a strong thematic. As much as big monster might look amazing in the game, we want you to have that experience. It needs to fit and it needs to work and synergize with the characters that we're putting in there. So yeah, we'll wait and see.
So in preparing for this interview, I always try and ask around to learn a little bit about who I'm interviewing, and consistently everyone came back with an absolute unit. Exactly how tall are you?
I'm about 6'5", so yeah, I'm not exactly a small chap.
I was expecting you to have to like duck to go under doors or something, like being like 7-8 feet tall. The way people talked about you, jeez.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, there's a subway tunnel actually in town as you go into work, and it's only 6 foot, so I have to duck for that one.
Yeah, tall people problems. I'm 6'2", so I don't have a 6'5" problem. So I can only imagine how much worse it gets as time goes on.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a blessing and a curse. You stand there and you go, I can see over the top of things, and then you get people behind you going, I can't see past you. So,
what does a DLC director do? Do you like stand over people with a wand and wave it? Do you like lurk over behind their shoulders, like, massaging them as they work? What is it you do?
It's interesting. It's interesting you say about lurk behind people. Only because obviously before COVID, it was an opportunity. My role was very much get up, walk about, see everybody, talk to everybody. So my job is really liaising with all the different disciplines, the people that physically make the content, the people that help us market it, people that put our videos together when you get the big reveal announced, talk to Games Workshop. So I was enjoying and actively getting in and amongst the team. Now we're in COVID, it's slightly different, right? Sometimes we're in the office, sometimes we're working from home like I am today. So you don't get quite that same contact with the kind of the virtual setup, but still talking to everybody. We have lots of kind of conversations early doors about, what it is that we're going to be making, laying out what our roadmap's going to be. I'll be sharing that with the team, getting them excited by that, and then likewise they'll disseminate that information across everybody. We've already touched on looking at picking what's going to be in the upcoming DLCs, maybe where we want to hold on to some things for the future rather than just drop it all now to make some sense that you get a big kind of, I don't want to say event, but kind of like a big event, right? Like an example of this was Warden and the Paunch. So we'd seen the community ask ages, can we have like all the different mages for the high elves? Because they're like, come on, Reg, you've got all these different spell laws, and we're like, I know, but we're gonna do some archmages, right? And we hadn't said that because we wouldn't share that. And we're like, if we do all the spell laws before we do that, that's going to feel a bit flat. So we're like, no, we'll do it Warden and Paunch. So you get essentially Mr. Batman there brooding in his tower, but then with all these magical casts coming along. So we try and plan for when to get the best impact and the best experience in the game. Beyond that, what else do I get up to? So still fix the odd bug here and there. I quite like doing that, actually. Taking on the community feedback, that's like super important to me. And has been, as you've seen, over the course of the years. So me and the team are constantly reviewing that every week, seeing what we can do, what we can't do, now what we can message out and tell everybody as well, because I think we're in a good spot there, and we like talking and sharing what we can with everybody. We enjoy making this game for you to play, so and having fun. We all try and have fun as we make this, and we hope that shines through.
Labors of love, as it were. It's a thing that if you enjoy what you're making and people get enjoyment out of it, it encourages you to keep working on it and put more into it. It's a cycle right there for sure. So what is the process of making a DLC? I'm sure it starts in a meeting somewhere, and then sort of how does it get ping-ponged around up until final release? What's the different stages you have to shepherd it through? Once
we've established what it's going to be, and there'll be quite a back and forth on that, what makes sense, who we're going to pick, what order we want to do it in, right? Because again, we want to make sure that we're putting out the right content, the right time for what the player base is asking for. there's no point in us going and dropping one set of content if people aren't asking for it, and they're definitely screaming for something else. So once we've established that, we go into like our pre-production phase, right? So chosen our characters, maybe chosen our units. How are we going to gel them together? And if it's like a Lord pack, if it's a rivalry, well, what is that rivalry going to be? Because in some cases, we've been fortunate that we've picked based on the lore, and the lore's been really strong, like Eltharion and Grom. And in other cases, it's not quite so much. And we've got to make something up there. I mean, like we did with Marcus and Nakai that I touched upon. So we spent a lot of time on that, thinking about what mechanics, what ideas will bring that content to life. Sort of filter down on that, do that a few times over, and then we're ready. Hopefully, at that point, the whole team's been brought in. You know, you've got your designers, your coders, your artists, and the like. That we're going to go into production. So at that point, you know, we're starting to build out that content, test if the ideas actually work, iterate on it, and start thinking about testing it, seeing what we like, what we don't like, getting feedback. Then we get to the point where essentially, right, we're done with that. So we're locking down. So now it really is kind of like the finer details, lots of tests. Let's try and break it. Let's try and ensure that it's a good quality ahead of time. And then we're wrapping up. We're going into kind of our final tests, making sure everything's great on the platforms, and starting to talk to everybody about it with the marketing and the trailers, and releasing it. So
it's interesting. It's a lot like a film production. It starts off with just a few people, balloons to a lot, and then kind of trickles back off again in the end.
Yeah. It's you know, and it flexes. Depends on the product that we make. Sometimes we might spend a little bit longer on one area than another. But yeah, they're all big pieces of content now. So,
Is there any particular DLC you're like, yeah, we were firing on all cylinders on that one. We nailed it. Like, this is the one that, like, if you're handing in your resume, it's like, yeah, I made that.
Yeah, I think Tomb Kings. I think Tomb Kings. I think we did a good job on Norska. I think this Norska was, or even actually Britannia was starting to show the signs of where the team was gelling. But Tomb Kings, I thought we gelled really, really, really well. Everybody knew how to synergize with everybody else on the team. The designs, the mechanics, the features, that was all, again, synergizing. Great. I think it might have helped because it was kind of a bunch of us coming from historical titles in the past. You know, we've got ancient Egyptians here, albeit they're dead now, duking it out here in Warhammer. So I think for a lot of the team that were not necessarily like huge Warhammer players at the time, that was a really nice in for them because they could understand an historical element, like how to get into it, and we converted them. So we've got people on the team now that absolutely love the content who you'd have asked them years ago, gone, about what do you know about Warhammer, and they said nothing. So they've fully absorbed themselves to it. So yeah, that was really pleasing. And then again, I think our Lord packs have been a lot of fun, like the Ikit Claw, that was a lot of fun. But we also really gelled well again when we worked on Vampire Coast. Nothing to do with the fact that it's undead again, but again, just a cool thematic that everybody could get behind. And who doesn't like seeing zombies riding around on crabs, you know?
Very cool visuals. It's interesting what you said right there about having a really strong visual identity helps people to rope in. I think that's definitely something to consider. I think you're bang on that as well. So you said you were a level designer back in the day, and is part of what you do on the DLC team occasionally working on the mod tools and creating new systems within it? Were you responsible for the Terry update to actually the update to the actual map builder? Because Warhammer has significantly improved map builder.
Not in recent times. So way back on Warhammer 1, yes, yeah. I was involved in that. But no, we've got really lucky actually to have a bunch of people on the team which have come from modding backgrounds, actually, and people that just really, really, like I do, really appreciate what modders can do. We like seeing how people can put a twist on it and change it up and play the game in a slightly different way than maybe what we expected, but have a lot of fun, enjoyment from it. So it's definitely something on our radar. We're still doing now, actually, in the updates that are coming out. The team actively come and say to me, "Oh, can we do this for the modding community? And can we maybe give a little bit of information there?" So I dare say it'll be something we'll continue to do for the years to come.
So thanks to you guys' support for the modding community, I know you guys go back and forth with a lot of the authors, like trying to make sure the authoring tools work as well. Animations are possible, asset editing is possible, all this. There's only one thing, as far as I know, that is still locked down, and that's audio. Is that just one of those things that it's just not possible with the current engine, or is something you guys might plan to try and institute some in the future?
Yeah, it's not something that we can do at the moment. Obviously, you've got to build the sound banks for the game, and sometimes you're using a third-party software for that. So maybe we'll get there at some point. But yeah, at the moment, not really in that area. Map making, UI, various other bits and bobs. But let's see.
It's cool. I just wanted to put it in your ear. So Tomb Kings was one of the first, if not the first, where you had 4 lords instead of doing 2 lords and a campaign map. And that's definitely a change of style from what you guys had done previously. Are there any plans to possibly go back to that older style with a small campaign map or more narrative campaign, which a lot of people really enjoyed the prologue from Warhammer 3. So is there any ideas to move towards these more scripted scenarios as well in the future?
That's a really interesting one. I mean, maybe I'll explain why we moved away from what we did. So we made Beastmen, right? And we made Wood Elves in Warhammer 1. And what we'd seen previously on other Total War titles were that people liked some of these kind of mini scenarios, as you might call it. So we thought, yeah, we'd do, Eye for Eye with Boris Todbringer, and then we do kind of, the realms where the Wood Elves inhabit and fight off the Beastmen. I think the difference with Warhammer was that because we had the larger world map, which had so many more pieces of content and people that you could interact with and do, the boiled down versions for a lot of people just didn't scratch that itch. They were nice enough, but they were kind of fire and forget, right? And we did have some ideas around the Wood Elf campaign in particular, because we had Morgor, to make it more of a survival kind of campaign. Waves and waves and waves of beastmen coming in, crashing into the realms. How long could you survive? Could you spread out and hold on to your different regions? So we toyed around with that. That didn't quite come to fruition. So we went back to our more natural ways. We made that campaign map a little bigger than the Beastman one, which people had already said was a bit on the small side. But ultimately, both of those came out, and the general consensus we were picking up on was when we did Norska, obviously we just added those without any sort of campaign. They just went straight into Warhammer 1 and eventually Warhammer 2. And with Tomb Kings, we got to that same kind of crossroads. Do we do another mini campaign? Well, what story would we tell? And actually, do people really want that story? Or hang on a minute, Tomb Kings has got loads of kick-ass characters here. Who could we do? And obviously, Cetra was straight in there, number 1. Mark in the Black, perfect choice, to sort of pit him against. And then we started feeling that, as we'd learned from the DLC Season 1, we wanted to put people in different places around the world. And I think we could justify that through Andy's use of the lore to put people like Khalida, or was it way down in Lustria, and Katep all the way up in Nagaroth, because it now meant that there was a new fighter in town, someone to go and play against that you wouldn't have experienced elsewhere. We didn't want to put them all in the Khemri Desert. That would have been of no use to us. And we felt that was really answering what people wanted, which was play as a new race, but play against all sorts of different starting oppositions in different parts of the world, getting different experiences, as opposed to, the kind of the crushed down narrative focused. You play it maybe once or twice, and then you move on. You want to go back to the big map. So that's why we moved away from that for Tomb Kings, and then subsequently Vampire Coast.
Really embracing that sandbox experience.
Yeah, because that's what people were telling us. That's what they wanted to play. So we're like, sure,
well,
let's make it a game play for you.
Proof is in the pudding. It feels like the DLCs have been more and more done better, I guess, as they've gone on. Definitely adjusting to fan expectations on that.
It's funny though, right? We are some way through our journey now, and I definitely think that people still like the content the way it is, but we are now starting to hear more people ask about, wouldn't it be good to do like War of the Beards or this kind of scenario? So it's not in the plans at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once maybe Immortal Empires is where we all want it to be, then maybe we return and have a look at some of that stuff, because maybe people want something different at that point in time.
Well, talking about something different, I assume this is you. I don't know, but bringing in the idea of legendary heroes was a stroke of genius on someone's part to be able to tap into these larger characters that people want to play that don't necessarily lead a faction. Was that you? And is that something you plan to do more of in the future? I've heard a lot of talk, and something I would be interested in, of like a legendary heroes pack, new types of DLC that bring in these smaller elements like that, but also add to the larger, sandbox feel.
Yeah, we were so long ago now. But yeah, I know when we introduced the Green Knight, people were like, "Oh man, that should be like a legendary hero," and we were a little bit coy and a little bit unsure. Again, I guess back in Warhammer 1 days, what did we want to do there? Did we want to open that Pandora's box? And so we sort of skirted around it. But definitely, the team and I embraced it in two. Right, we put Ariel into the game, put Gorich into the game, we put Utrecht and Felix. We put all sorts of awesome characters in. So yeah, Warhammer 3, expect more legendary heroes. They are a really good way, I think, of embracing the lore, letting a lot of fan favourite characters exist for people to play and use in a variety of campaigns. That's kind of, legendary lores are brilliant, right? New starting location, new mechanics, and all the rest of it. But unless you're able to confederate them, you're playing as one of them, and you maybe don't get so many toys and many experiences as you could have. So legendary heroes are a great way of allowing you to sort of go and catch them all and have a load of fun. So definitely expect more of that. I dare say we're going to do some for free as well. So expect some free pieces of content, because we want everybody to experience some of these cool characters in the game. So yeah, plenty to see in the future.
Speaking of things to see, so looking at the Immortal Empires map that's been revealed so far, everyone, of course, has lots of questions about the large blank spaces on the map in the top corners and the bottom corners. So anything you'd like to say to that?
Yeah, sure. So our kind of tricky one, right? It's a world, so you need to make it look like a world and not maybe have things that are excluded, which kind of you'd be questioning, well, why is it excluded? So when you refer to kind of places like Ind and Koresh, down in kind of essentially Warhammer's Southeast Asia, sure, we could have made a map where we didn't include them, but that would have kind of felt slightly weird, because obviously we've got our sea lane feature and we've got parts of the world there that you can traverse around close by, but they're not going to be traversable. They're not going to be having content there for any foreseeable future. They're there purely to make it feel like the world of Warhammer that we all kind of come to expect. So we are absolutely focused on what is 8th edition Warhammer. Those races don't feature there. So yeah, but if an opportunity arises in the future and all parties are happy with it, then let's explore it. But yeah, nothing at the moment.
A very good trained answer. I always love when I can see the media training kick in. I'm like, oh, he's good. He's very good. Look at him do the gymnastics there. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. I want to give you a chance to talk to something, if you don't mind. So something that I'd seen from several people is that the map is very squished on the left-hand side over on the Nagarroth.
At the end of the day, the world map, we can make it bigger and bigger and bigger, right? But the bigger we make it, the more content we add to it, the more the performance it's going to be. So there comes a point where you have to marry up a little bit of each of that. The design team definitely wanted like some sea lanes down the west coast, essentially, so they could make use of that. So it might not be the most one-to-one representation of that part of the Warhammer world, but it did the design job that was needed for that for now. You've seen what we've done in 2, right? We've gone back, and where it made sense, we reacted to the feedback and we've changed it. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go and change that part of the world, but if it makes sense in the future and what content that we're doing, we can, move borders and change parts of the map. So it's like what we saw with, other parts of the world. If you go back to Warhammer 1, we really had to sort of warp and distort even the old world. So it's trying to find that blend where it works with the gameplay, rather than the lore purist, which we try and satisfy as best as possible, but there's a line. It's like we said earlier, isn't it? Right, when we put Khalida in Lustria, people are like, what? That's ridiculous. She doesn't come from Lustria. What's she doing down there? But it gave you that experience where you could fight against Skaven, you could fight against lizards and all other different characters, which you wouldn't have got if you were in Khemri and you were just battling more dusty boys.
I mean, like, I would love to talk to you about all the different possibilities of fun factions coming in the future. When it's like, but what about the Moot and Ind and Koresh and all these amazing things? And it's so much fun to talk about that. But I understand you guys don't want to set expectations and don't want to open that barrel of worms, to say the least.
Exactly, it's the working relationship with Games Workshop. So we'd like to make whatever they were allowed to make. we enjoy making the content, and we enjoy seeing people enjoy it as well. So it's just find that appropriate thing for the IP.
I find Nippon particularly interesting in this situation because it seems to be something specific that Total War players want, that not necessarily Games Workshop players want, because people get so excited having come from Shogun 2 and things like that. I think the fan base is much more interested in that than the rest of the Warhammer community is, in a sort of way. Yeah,
we definitely see a lot of people interested in them, but then other places as well, right? Like you said, halflings. I had some halfling models. I had a hot pot catapult, and the chefs. So it's just that some of the stuff is just not. It's not Warhammer as we know it today. So
that's the thing about working on something that's existed since the 1980s, I guess, for Warhammer Fantasy. Yeah. And a couple times you pulled from some pretty deep lore going back. Repons, that was what, 4th edition?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I found, even going through the Wood Elves, you guys had to dig pretty deep. You had mentioned when you were designing the Beastmen DLC how you wanted to do a mini campaign with a lot of invasions. And you guys circled back to that a little bit when you made the Wood Elf DLC. That idea kind of got reused a little bit with the invasions coming in.
Yeah, we do. We do put some stuff to bed and let it simmer, and then dig it up again, and we get new people on the team, and they've got ideas of how they can take it forward. We get new tools as well, so opportunities sort of arise. I remember having discussions on the original Wood Elves where we wanted to have teleportation, and the code team were just like absolutely horrified by the idea of it. But lo and behold, we get to Warhammer 2 and we make Wood Elves, and we're talking about it, and they go, you know what, that might be possible. Let's have a look into that. And so, hence why we got the new world routes, which, you don't teleport everywhere. It's limited to locations, but it lets us play out that kind of fantasy, right, of moving between the various different magical forests of the world.
One of my questions I was going to ask is is there a mechanic that you wanted to do that you didn't get a chance to? And it sounds like teleportation was one of those. You wanted to at the time, but I just wasn't quite there. But you got to circle back and try again. So.
Yeah, that was definitely one. We still learning on Hordes. We're still trying to make those as good as they can be. So we've got some interesting stuff there in the works. I think one, it's not a huge mechanic, but it's one that's you'll see in the battles is the unbreakable mechanic. Mm-hmm. That one, I think. Me and the team would like to have another crack at. In its inception, it made sense, right? Dwarf slayers and things like that, they fight to the death. That's what they're there for. They're going to throw themselves at the biggest troll or whatever it might be. But it can lead itself to some battles where they end in a little bit of a damp squib. They're not quite as thematic a kind of experience as we'd hoped. So that's something I think we'll have another look at and see what we can do there to stop it being like a one-on-one duel at the end of the battle, which goes on a little too long. Certainly one of my proudest moments was, again, it's Wood Elves, right? It's the original Wood Elves. The absolutely loved and loathed Amber mechanic, in the original iteration, actually paved the way for what we see today. So that was us feeling the need to introduce more resources into the game, more things for you to go out there and collect, more things for you to sort of synergize with the rest of what is Total War, and that, yeah, as I say, it opened the door to what you see now with all the different DLCs and the main game factions having their own bespoke mechanics, bespoke things to collect and like amalgamate and merge together. So yeah, you can thank the Wood Elves for that, really, and I think where Warhammer is now and going forward. Implementation wasn't quite right, but we came back and we tweaked it, and yeah, it's been very useful.
Well, I suppose that's the advantage of being the DLC director across all 3 games. You can circle back around and touch on stuff that, get a second crack at it.
We're very fortunate that we're allowed to try, and we have the backing from the community to be a bit nuts at times and nuke stuff, blow stuff up. We didn't quite get the Skaven to space or to the moon. That was one idea that didn't quite pan out.
Are there any other factions and stuff that you guys hope to circle back to in Warhammer 3?
There are, and we are actively working on some of them in Immortal Empires. Some are getting more, fixes and improvements than others. And not on the scale of, obviously, some of the big old world updates you've seen before, like Empire and Greenskin. So we're getting some smaller ones here. But we definitely think that the Legendary Lords and the races there will get some improvements for everyone to enjoy. The one big bugbear that we had, which I'm 100% or 99.9% sure that we've communicated to you all, is Warriors of Chaos update. Warriors of Chaos was the big kind of, one that we weren't particularly happy with. They are the nasty, evil guys that ruined the Warhammer world, and they needed some love. They needed a new lick of paint. So we've been hard at work on them, and they're really cool now. I think everyone's going to enjoy that. I really, really, really hope so. So yeah. So
you mentioned Skaven a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
Is Skaven your favorite faction?
No, not me. I really like Skaven for how Games Workshop created them, in terms of the unbelievably strong thematics that they all have. Andy always refers to them as Bond villains as well. They've always got this ridiculously over-the-top kind of master plan at the end to blow up the world or whatever it might be, and it always fails or doesn't quite see the light of day. They are a lot of fun. They sort of write themselves, and it allows us to be nuts. That's for sure. I mean, the workshop and the mutations and the finger click, Ganeshan, we've had all sorts of fun with them. But personally, I really enjoy the Lizardmen. I love the aesthetic of the Lizardmen. I mean, I know the thing that we said back on 2 was like, it's dinosaurs riding dinosaurs shooting lasers, and I still think they're wicked cool. And I've got a big army actually. Some are at work and some are at home. There's so many good factions.
I can see as a designer, especially, why you enjoy Skaven. As you said, there's such a good villain with such strong theming, and it makes it so fun to create something for them. And I've never really thought about it from a design aspect before. I was like, oh, yeah, I suppose they are fun to just create for, regardless if you like for that.
We like all those tools that they offer us and those crazy, crazy opportunities, really. It doesn't stop us from doing that with others. You just got to dig a little deeper. You take someone like the Empire, it's a completely different vibe. We want them to feel heroic and noble, and they're like a Swiss Army knife, right? They got a bit of everything. They got a bit of firepower, a bit of magic, cavalry. They got the whole shebang. So, like, how do you make them still feel that way? And that's why we've picked other characters within their sort of pantheon to try something new. So, like, sending Wolfheart to Lustria and other people, as you'll see in Immortal Empires, to new locations as well, just to create different experiences.
So you mentioned the mechanics for certain races, but also characters can be a little tricky sometimes. How do you go about finding a mechanic?
Some are a little harder than others. Some absolutely write themselves. Skaven are a really good example of that, right? They literally lay it out in front of you. Other characters are more subtle, so that's where we really like the grey areas that Games Workshop sometimes leave behind, and we'll engage with them and go, well, what was meant by this, and how would you potentially adapt that? And I think some really good examples of that were things like, saying King of the Warlord, we had Belagar, and I remember there was an extract in his army book. He resides in Caracate Peaks and fights for the the ancestors. It's like, okay, the ancestors. Okay, is there anything more here? And then there's like a little snippet about a couple of different ancestors within the Dwarven lines. And so we approached them, and it was some time ago, and it was even some time still after obviously Lord of the Rings and the like. But we're like, I think there's something here that can make him special. And we start talking about these ghost ancestors, and okay, we don't want to depict them like vampire ghosts or anything like that ilk, but that was something which we thought would be fun. It would give him something different that no one else had at that time. A multitude of different characters that could help him in the campaign. But it was also paying homage to the lore that was based around him. So yeah, GW were really, really nice and allowed us to do that. So sometimes it's even the smallest little thing, and you read the army books, and I know we cover to cover. Sometimes it's those tiny little extracts, and not even on the character's page, and there's something in there. I think we saw one on Nakai there, and it's just like, okay, cool, we could do that with him. And you might even just take a place name or a person name or an idea where they were in the world at that time, and start to paint in some of those grey areas, and make sure that we think it's a solid gameplay experience, and that the Games Workshop it absolutely does justice to their IP. So who else have we done that for? Wolfric, right, and Norska, monster hunting. Not really. He's like a duelist, right? He goes and takes people's heads and all the rest of it. He's not really a monster hunter per se, but with the mammoths and the skin wolves and the Famirs all coming in, that kind of inspired us to but he does come out there and claim things and fight people and take stuff down. And we thought that would be fun, and we riffed off the Monstrous Arcanum, because that being a physical book that Games Workshop presented, and that's where many of these creatures came from. That was the idea spawn, and are you cool with that? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So it comes from a multitude of different places.
Yeah, it seems like that's where you earn your pay as the DLC director. It's like, it's not quite so obvious. No, how am I going to suss this out of here? I assume the idea is to support Immortal Empires for years to come and keep expanding it and do that. So, I mean, your work is just beginning again, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's just the start, really. It's getting it into a good shape as we can for release, and then we know that there's going to be loads of feedback of bits that people like and think could be better, and there could be tweaks, and we'll make this again that kind of same organic experience that Warhammer 2 was, where react to that, we look to improve and make it more accessible, more enjoyable, more stuff to play with. I dare say the community will teach us a few things along the way, which we'll learn from. So,
when you get done with this, you'll have worked on Warhammer for a decade. Have you given any thought to what you want to work on in life after Warhammer?
Yes, but it's a funny one. It's like you say, it will be a decade, and I feel like, for me personally, I want to get to that end point. Maybe there won't ever be an end point if people keep on liking stuff. But do you know what I mean? It's like I've got some really interesting things on the horizon, which I think are going to be hopefully enjoyed by many. So we want to get to those, want to put those out, want to give those experiences, and we'll cross that bridge in the future when we get to it, when the dust settles and people may have had enough of it. But until that time, we enjoy it.
What's the great thing about the Warhammer world? There's always a little bit extra to add. There's always another legendary lord to pull in and add into that giant sandbox you've created. And, that's the cool thing about the Immortal Empires map, is it is just an infinite sandbox. You can keep adding till the cows come home, really.
Exactly. I haven't got my hot pot in there yet, so maybe one day we get that one.
Your chicken riders. There's so much silly fun.
I don't know about them, but yeah.
Oh, you can't do the hot pot without the chicken riders. I mean, that's the beautiful joke unit. Personal note, I absolutely love trying to figure out what you're going to do next. Like it's been tremendous fun to really kind of crack it open and get in there a bit further to what you're doing. So,
it's been fun.
Yeah. Have yourself a great day out there. This is tremendously fun. Hopefully, when we get further down the line and we can talk about more specific stuff, I might be able to talk to you again. So thank you so much, sir.
Oh, no, my pleasure, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I enjoy watching your videos and your counterparts as well. It's enjoyable seeing what you guys come up with and how close to the money it is or isn't, shall we say.
And this has been an interview with Rich Aldridge, DLC Director for Total War Warhammer 3. I want to thank the Creative Assembly for sponsoring this interview and allowing me time to sit down with him, and thank you for watching. Have a great day out there.